Okay, bye-bye. You know, it's amazing how quickly we take little gadgets like this for granted. But in places like Aramac, they've long been acutely aware of how important communication is in their everyday lives.
All over this district, you can see the remains of the longest privately built telephone line in the world. The beef companies, which owned huge holdings like Bowen Downs, built the line to link their properties. It stretched over thousands of kilometres and was so efficient, it was only replaced by microwave technology a few years ago. Like most things in the West, it worked well. But the people of Aramac weren't going to be isolated by distance either. Despite the fact the main government railway line bypassed them through Barcaldine, they came up with a typical Aramac solution. They built their own railway. This old beauty is fondly known as Aunt Emma, and she gave good and faithful service for decades. She was just one of a succession of locos and rail motors that kept the link with the main line open through flood and drought. In 1913, the Aramac Shire Council built a private railway or tramway from Barcaldine to Aramac to move the huge quantities of primary produce the Shire generated. The opening of the tramway was cause for much celebration, with a huge ball where all the locals were decked out in their finery to usher in this great feat of engineering. The tramway not only moved wool and beef, it also provided an all-weather link for passengers in times of flood, when nothing moved on these black soil plains unless it was on rails. With the improvement in roads and vehicles, patronage of the line dropped off and it gradually became obsolete, finally closing in the mid-1970s.
Well, the tramway closed in December of 1975 and Aunt Emma, the RM28 rail motor, has been in the museum since then.
But, like so many other seemingly outdated things, the tramway may have a new life in the not-so-distant future. The locals have preserved the engine, rolling stock and rails and plan to build a 2-kilometre tourist loop line around the town. And if the locals have their way, Aunt Emma will run again. Yet another touch of irony is the planned new transcontinental railway from Melbourne to Darwin. And guess which town is closest to the line over the entire route? You guessed it, Aramac. The railway will bring renewed prosperity to Aramac, and these kids will reap the rewards. And Aramac has some of the nicest kids around.
Aramac school kids have a country charm. They're genuine, they have a little bit of naivety, which just makes their personality wonderful. They're very mature, so you can have a good conversation with them. We don't believe in just the talk and chalk method with students. Because students are subjected to so much media these days, we find that we've got to look at alternative teaching strategies, and the internet is one of those that we access quite readily. We've just got it installed this year, and the students are doing a vast array of projects to do with the internet.
And it's not every kid who catches a 4-legged bus to school, is it? The West is now a mecca for tourists from all over the world, and more are discovering Aramac every year. If you thought Aramac has a colourful past, just wait until you see what's happening here and now.
We get thousands of tourists out here every year. They are always amazed at what we have to offer.
They've done all the touristy things like the Gold Coast and are looking for something different. The locals point out the diversity of the country with its dramatic changes in the soil, vegetation and wildlife. This can occur in only a few hundred metres. And it all depends on the natural water table. In the spring, the region explodes into a sea of wildflowers. Where there was a desert just a few weeks before, there's now a burst of colour. Visitors are left almost speechless. The region sits on the huge underground reservoir of the Great Artesian Basin. In the middle of the mostly dry outback, you'll find two vast freshwater lakes, Galilee and Dun, and both have been a focal point for holidaying Aramac locals. Families have maintained modest huts on the Lake Dun foreshore for generations. You can rent one of these and have a holiday experience like no other. People from all over the world are stunned by the broad skies of this country. For some who've spent their whole lives in the city, it's often the first time they've seen an empty horizon. Sunsets in this country are vast colour and cloud pictures that can take your breath away. Probably the most important and definitely the most loved tree in this part of the outback is the gidea, or gidgee as the locals call it. Apart from making fence posts that last for decades, the gidgee is also a beautiful cabinet timber. But the gidgee has a more subtle message. When there's rain about, the gidgee gives off a strong scent of eucalyptus and turpentine. Not everybody loves it, but locals say the scent of the gidgee means you're close to home. When you fly over these endless plains, you could be forgiven for thinking of a dry wasteland. But in fact, much of the region is sitting on a vast subterranean sea, the Great Artesian Basin. And he is just the man to tell us all about it. This is Bill Ballinger, arriving in what he calls his work truck.
What we call the desert country here at Aramac, east of Aramac, is not desert as people know it around the world. It's really a pastoral zone. Also, the areas west of Timberline sit directly over the Great Artesian Basin, which, of course, is one of our greatest resources in Australia, as well as the world, as far as having great quantities of good quality water. And I'm involved with organisations, Watering Australia being one of them, that has input into building a management strategy that can preserve this resource.
Aramac would be very close to the shoreline of the Great Artesian Basin. The basin's made up of sandstone, what we call aquifers, that carry the water, with a clay top that caps the water and holds it down in the aquifer under pressure. It is made up of marine deposits, and the sea came and went about 4 times during the period of the laying down of the Great Artesian Basin. And those deposits are exposed at the edge in different layers. At Aramac, we actually have most of those layers exposed. So it's quite an interesting area for the fossils that come out of the marine episodes.
Up ahead is a strange creature unique to this place.
This strange creature is called the Thomas Lochius guidus and is found around here when mainly tourist buses are about. No, not that one, the one on the ground. It seems a bird in the road is sillier than 2 in the bush.
Well, Tom also provides plenty of outback entertainment for the tourists. He's been cracking the whip for about 30 years now. Hey, Tom, be a bit careful.
Oh, sorry.
Well, that's our version of the Aramac story. I'm sure you'll agree that it's one of Australia's special places. But I'll let a few of the locals tell you what the town means to them.
We found ourselves without a baker and it looked like closing. However, we had a council employee here that had long service leave due to him, and he, on a voluntary basis, took his long service leave and kept the baker shop. Never baked bread in his life either, but he took on the job and he kept the baker shop open, and That's just one good example of Aramac community spirit. And they reckon he makes the best pies in Queensland. Nifty's his name.
Just relaxed. There's no smog, no crime, just a wonderful, peaceful lifestyle.
I was brought up in the city and moved to Aramac, and I've got no desire to move back.
We love Aramac.
And that's what I reckon. I'll see you later, out back at Aramac.